Still here, so the show must go on. And we'll give a few minutes for people to get here because I can't set these up ahead of time so that notices go out. And everybody knows when I run anyhow, so. And plus, those notices, at least from YouTube, aren't terribly reliable. So hopefully this is all working as far as I can tell it is. And what we're going to do today is I'll do my usual presentation, and then we'll see if we can get some people on my Discord server to join up, because we'll basically be presenting a conundrum or dilemma on how exactly is what's the best way to go about being salt and light. So far we got Pete Atkin. Let's see if hopefully some others will come along. And I think if I click on a message here, you don't see the message itself. Okay, that's cool. Oh, sorry about the perms question being asked, and I will look into that later. I obviously can't do it right now, but you should be if you have the reader role, which I'm pretty sure you do there. So I'm not sure what the issue is, but anyway, don't worry about it. Hey Dom, good to see you. So we're going to look into the matter of a BANdemic, and basically, and I will fill in the description things after the video's done, because I can't do it ahead of time. Hey Colin. But what I'm going to put under it is, on the description, is if you're being muzzled or quarantined or shunted to a ghetto, so to speak, for your beliefs, you're being treated as though you carry a contagious disease. And that's really the BANdemic I'm talking about, because it's a problem of not just message boards and servers, but the whole world, pretty much. And especially the rapid decline in the Western world on any kind of wrongthink, to use an Orwellian term. So we're going to look into that. We got this article up here, and this is from 2016. Okay, so almost 5 years ago. And ask yourself why this hasn't been happening to businesses that are run by Muslims or Hindus or anything else but Christians. Why is it always Christians that these groups pick on? Hey, chow. So, as this article says, and again, this is from 2016, Christianity's been responsible for the foundation of the bedrock of political, economic, and legal systems that provide the pillars of Western democracy. Of course, constitutional republic here, but the point is that, yes, it has been a major influence in civilization, some good, some bad, and not everything about it is Christians for sure, because what they're talking about is not how it's implemented, but the underlying philosophy of it, which is individual hard work and responsibility, and trying to make things better for people, not just ourselves, but others. Those are Christian ideals for sure, but people will say, well, other religions have had those ideals too, and they have, but they haven't really permeated society the way Christianity seems to have done. Some people say correlation is not causation, but I'm not going to sit here and argue about that. I'm just saying that this is a problem now that has not only lost its steam as far as any kind of moral influence in society, but society is turning decidedly against it. Good to see you also, Awakened Jaguar and Infinite Reach Ministries. And I'll probably not shout anybody out after this for a while, so understandable. But anyway, no longer a significant influence, viewed as outdated, bigoted, and largely irrelevant. These are the charges that people make against Christianity in particular. We've been binge watching Star Trek Next Generation, and of course Star Trek, from its get-go, the original series, has been, like a lot of space programs, not only pro-evolution but anti-Christian, anti-religion in general. They're very atheistic, and they have some episodes like the one we watched yesterday where it's just blatant hatred of Christianity and religion, because they think it always results in people, of course, there's the caricatures that atheists come up with, that religion always results in people doing stupid things like putting someone to death because the crops failed, that this is somehow Christianity's fault or religion's fault. And but the history of atheistic governments have not been any better, and we'll see that in the next article. So, but the influence has been there, but it is gone pretty much now, and those values are being mocked and opposed and feared. And I think fear is the operative word, because people try to eliminate what they're afraid of, because if they weren't afraid of other ideas, they wouldn't try to destroy them and silence them. It's the silencing that's getting to the heart of my little conundrum that I'll make more clear at the end of my presentation part here. And again, I'm hoping some people can join me on panel to discuss it. Anyway, so they go on here to say what people of faith fail to realize is that the end game of the secular humanist agenda is not to embrace religious tolerance. Duh. It's the elimination of religion from society. There's even a thing called freedom from religion. I don't know if it's a society or group or whatever it is, but they want to eliminate it because they fear it, because they believe in this false slippery slope between belief in the supernatural and some kind of atrocities. Again, never mind, totally ignore all the atrocities committed in the name of atheistic governments. This view was given a huge boost, they say, by the infamous Twin Towers in 9/11, which formed the catalyst for the new atheist movement to attack aggressively any form of faith as being illogical, irrational, and downright dangerous. There's the fear factor to the well-being of mankind. And then we've also had I've always got things to say that the Christian community gets wrong on this topic, but the problem of eroding morality. This has been the first thing that had to be done. It's been planned for a long time and executed for a long time, and the boundaries pushed ever lower of what society tolerates in the form of immorality. Yes, the family has been attacked, but in defending the family, too many Christians go to the other extreme and want patriarchy back, where women don't vote, don't own property, and must be under the control of some male. We're not going back there. I'm, not sorry to tell them, but that's what they want. So now anyone who expresses biblical belief that marriage is a lifelong and exclusive union, got no problem with that, between one man and one woman, that proves the only legitimate context. And tolerance is reserved for anything and everything that is based upon feelings and relative values is what's the problem now. In the new political order, any form of absolutism, well, truth is an absolute, so you're against truth if you're against absolutes, is seen as both heretical and antisocial, and therefore to be rooted out and destroyed. And then trend, this isn't just America. They start with South Africa here, where the war on faith has been really getting bad there too. Been highlighted in the recent cases in both U.S. and Northern Ireland, where Christians in particular have had their lives turned upside down by this collision of worldviews. And again, I asked, what other group of religious people is typically targeted in Western societies, first world countries, by people who want us to have to choose between our personal convictions, which we're free to have, and being able to run a business or go to work or whatever it is. So they haven't been so far asking this, but as we know, they won't stop there. They'll target layers and layers of people until everybody's a target. And so if people won't stand up for other groups that are being targeted, then it's going to happen to them, and there won't be anybody to stand up for them. It says in the U.S., a 70-year-old florist was asked by a long-time friend and customer to provide flowers for a same-sex wedding. When she told him that in good conscience she could not apply her creative gifting to participate because of her relationship with Jesus, she was sued by the Attorney General of Washington State for violating the state's anti-discrimination law, and by the two men in their personal capacities represented by the American Civil Liberties Union, which of course means Anti-Christian Liberties Union. the AC, if we really want to be honest. In this instance, the court ruled that while she is free to believe what she wants, she may not practice her religious beliefs in her workplace, or the full coercive power of the state will be brought against her. That's not freedom. She now faces bankruptcy since the state and the couple are allowed to collect damages and attorney's fees from her personally as well as from her business. This is targeting. This is hate speech. This is intolerance. And this is what is coming on other people who think it's okay as long as it's happening to some group they don't like. This is how it goes. So anyway, and then it says Northern Ireland. Asher's Bakery was asked to bake a cake featuring the slogan "Support Gay Marriage," as well as characters Bert and Ernie from Sesame Street. Everybody knows what that's about. Pushing it on kids, as they have been for a long time. When they turned down the order, the Equality Commission ruled that this amounted to discrimination, despite the fact they were unaware of the sexual orientation of the person who placed the order. And the response would have been exactly the same if a heterosexual person had asked for the same message on the cake. It's not who's asking, it's the message. A Belfast court later confirmed this ruling, ordered that Asher's Bakery pay £500 damages. In their recent appeal, they argued that to be ordered to provide a product with a message that is inconsistent with their deeply held religious beliefs is equivalent to being forced to burn a pinch of incense at the altar of a god they do not worship. Judgment is reserved in the appeal, and while it's possible their argument will prevail, it's clear that anti-religion agenda will continue to be aggressively pursued. So, again, this is from 2016. All right, it hasn't gotten better. Then there's an example from South Africa, so it's all over the world. The same issue, the same antagonists, the same people doing the targeting, and the same people being targeted. It's always the same two groups so far. But it isn't going to stop there, as we'll see in the next article. So, again, why do they only target Christian businesses, and why it always seems to be the immoral agenda people, and when you use too many trigger words to get shut down. So this one, religious, this is from today. Yeah, this is the 31st. This is a group name. They always use this name. It's always by Tyler Durden at Zero Hedge. So, religious books seized and burned in communist China. Believers given jail terms. I guess so far you're still allowed to say the name of the country in question. So, after the Holocaust, whatever you want to believe about that, paved the way for the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. That's what came out of that. However, our basic right to freedom of religion or belief is still being trampled in societies ruled by totalitarian regimes. It isn't as bad here yet, but again, you know, the businesses being targeted for years now have been happening in our country too. In communist China, practicing a certain faith, printing, or even reading religious books could result in prison terms and abuse. Spiritual believers in China, be it Christian, Buddhist, Muslims, or Falun Gong practitioners, are faced not only with brutal suppression or forced labor terms, but also have their religious books burned or trashed at the hands of the Chinese Communist Party. And this happens in a virtual sense all the time online. Because they want to burn the Bible and rip it apart. There are people who claim to honor the Bible that want to rip half of it out. And there are people who want to add books or take away books and twist the meaning of whatever's left. So that's virtual book burning. But it's being done literally and physically in China. And they don't care which religion anymore. And I said this is a slippery slope. They start with whoever puts up the least resistance, which is usually Christians, because we tend not to be violent about it. But then they go to all religions, and then they'll go to any wrong think at all, which, as we've seen in the U.S., is just being conservative or not being hard left. Anything that is not hard left is conservative, and you're a danger to the world if you're not killed or imprisoned or whatever they feel like doing, because they're afraid. They're afraid of truth, and they're afraid of the supernatural because it means there might be a God. And they don't even care at that point which one. The coercive policies are aimed at forcing these religious followers to renounce their faith and follow the communist ideologies based on atheism and Marxism. Those two seem to go together. Ban on publications as well. a 3 self-church venue in one of the villages under Lanling County was demolished in July 2020, so this is happening in our day. County government official told the congregation that all churches too close to government institutions must be destroyed. And the same goes for those that look better than government buildings. So even just to have nicer property than the government, or be too close to government property, which in their mind is all property, is grounds for having your building destroyed. So, belief in the Communist Party is the only religion allowed, the officials said, according to the report. That's what's happening here. It is the Communist Party. It is not Democrats and Republicans. Those are just sugar coatings of the same beast. And it is communism. It's straight up communism, Marxism. And it does not value human life. It does not value freedom of conscience or freedom of practice of any other thought than they want. We're seeing that more and more and more pushed really fast in the Western world. Another report, the magazine stated that the same month, 26 people in China were sentenced under the charges of illegal business operations for being involved in printing religious publications meant for internal circulation for the South Korean Good News Mission. So, in China, you couldn't print something for export that had a religious theme. And there are people in the U.S. online who would do the same thing given the power, because they've shown that they want to silence Christianity, which they use the term religion when what they mean by their descriptions in the context is Christianity, out of the public sphere as ideas pushed into a ghetto. You know, virtual or literal. The director and 2 members of the mission were fined heavily and handed prison terms of 3 years and 10 months or 6 months, respectively, while some printing house managers were fined as high as $15,000 US and sentenced to 3 years in prison for having thoughts that the government doesn't like. Okay? Keep this stuff in mind, because I am getting to a point eventually. Even postal and courier services are being strictly monitored. In another report, a courier company staff member from somewhere in China told Bitter Winter that the CCP exerted strict control over mail goods in the year 2020. Only the mailing of government-approved books is allowed. All books with bad information, fake news, similar thing here, including religion, are not allowed to be dispatched. If public security authorities discover violations of these regulations, the company will be fined and closed down. So, bad information, wrong think, hate speech, anything they don't like that you think, they will punish you because they're afraid of you. They will silence, intimidate, threaten, then destroy, abuse, and murder for wrong think. And again, if people who are not religious don't stand up for those who are, they'll be next, if that's any motive at all. There's another one here in June 2020. Somebody was visited a post office to mail gospel text to her daughter living abroad, but the authorities told her the publications were illegal objects. I knew that it was illegal to send combustible objects, drugs, guns, and ammunition, but even religious materials are now illegal. If you value freedom at all, you will be standing up with religious people if you're not religious, or spiritual, people prefer that term, then you don't really value freedom. If you only value it for certain groups, then you don't value it. So, if any such content is found, be fined, worse, business will be closed. Any religious content makes the issue political, not religious. Although banners on the streets say people are allowed religious belief, the only way they can practice freely is that the only faith they can practice freely is that of the Communist Party. That the state is God to them, and that's the way the hardline atheists want it. Okay? So what am I getting right? It's been rightly said that quarantines, speaking of the title that I hope went out to the video, BANdemic, quarantines are for the sick. Lockdowns are for criminals and the ashamed to cover their faces. So if you're being put under those conditions, guess what the powers over you are saying by their edicts? And keep in mind that every level of the powers, including almost every store or restaurant, willingly and quickly enforce those edicts, which of course are not even laws. But what's most disturbing is how many people not only eagerly comply, they turn on their friends, family, and strangers for the slightest hint of nonconformity. This is the mentality that makes governments like that possible. And that's where the problem lies, in that mentality. And I've lost count of the number of times in message boards and servers that I've been told for no apparent reason, just out of the blue, that some server or forum isn't a religious one. I mean, it happened recently to one I left where they're, every time this person saw me, they're like, this isn't a religious server. Whether I was talking about it or not. They go out of their way to tell me this, and I've never seen it said to anyone but Christians, and often to Christians who didn't bring it up, not just me, but on a larger, more serious scale. The world wants to quarantine Christian expression, as we're seeing here, and to treat the Bible as a book to be burned or shredded out of fear of what it says. So, we've all seen the news stories like these, about people targeting Christian businesses and forcing them to violate their convictions, but Christians are finding it increasingly difficult to hold jobs even in companies that mandate tolerance for just about any expression of political or religious views except the Christian faith. They want to make it impossible for a Christian to hold on to their personal convictions and also hold on to their jobs. So it's Christians mostly, although in China it's everybody, and that will come to the rest of the world, but it's Christians, especially in the other countries, who are being oppressed and threatened and hounded and marginalized, yet the world so fears us that it projects its own hate crimes onto us because they think we're intolerant when it's really them. We've been very tolerant. We haven't sought to target their businesses or anything. So hate is being narrowly defined as whatever the group in power wants to call it and finds offensive, but truth offends the world, so the world will find truth, especially the truth of the gospel, a hate crime worthy of silencing and canceling, punishing and executing, or whatever it is, the depth of their fear, really. But the difference between this and the quarantining of Christians in forums and servers is really only a matter of degree rather than kind. So granted, there are many Christians who do try to make every topic about the Bible and our faith, and they are sometimes obnoxious and pushy, but the far greater problem in my experience is the hyper-passivity of those who self-quarantine out of fear of upsetting people, and these are people who think our very existence is upsetting and offensive. So it's becoming increasingly difficult for me, especially, to be a part of any venue where Christians are told to keep our mouths shut unless we're in our safe space, our ghetto. Non-Christians frequently discuss religion, and most of the time it's about Christianity and the Bible, but if Christians take part in such discussions, we're told we have to go to our ghetto to talk about it. So now there's some merit to the idea, and I'm getting to my point finally, to the idea that we need to take whatever little corner we can get in order to reach the lost there, but we're only reaching a fraction of the people we could reach through venues such as live streaming or open source social media. And sure, we can do both, but reaching the lost still happens even if we're not in the restrictive places. And rest assured that whatever wrong think is punished today will be applied to something you hold dear tomorrow, whoever anybody listening might be, regardless of whether it's spiritual or philosophical or political. But so the question is, the conundrum is, which is the better strategy? To leave and shake the dust from our feet, and thereby create our own cloistered communities where we can't be salt and light to the lost? Or to cower in our ghettos and tell ourselves that we're equal members of the community in the slim hope that some seeker might join us there? So look at the Amish, for example. They have run their own internal communities for generations, yet they have almost no effect on the rest of the world. Yet which analogy fits here? Are they taking themselves out and making their own community and showing the rest of the world, we don't need you? Not really. Nobody in the rest of the world thinks of it that way, do they? They think of it more as they have withdrawn and can't and won't interact because they feel that they would be oppressed. I don't know. There's a gazillion different reasons. Mostly they want to be separate and quote unquote holy, but the rest of the world doesn't give them a passing thought most of the time. So they're not influencing. So the question is, what's the better strategy? The world is experiencing what we could call a BANdemic, for sure, but what about the various online communities? They've already canceled us, cancel culture, in principle. So what do you think? Do we stay in the ghetto and accept our shame as being people who have to be kept quarantined from the rest of the community, but try to be salt and light in our restricted area, or to leave those forums and servers to form our own and hope that the seekers will join us there? The question is really, even beyond that, what message are we sending either way? Because what message, for example, do the Amish send to anybody? That we just don't want to be a part of you. We just don't want to live in your society. That's what they're saying. But are they reaching anybody with a message? No. But online it's a little murkier, because whether we're in a particular room, chat area, whatever, community or not, we still have public places that we can give our message out. The problem is, will it reach people? I mean, the internet is so saturated with so many different channels and things, the likelihood of being found is pretty low if you're not in a specific community. Yet, if you're in one of those communities and they make you stay in your ghetto, what have you gained? So that's the question. I'm going to have to ask the chat for responses, because there's nobody on the panel here. So what do you guys think? Let me try to roll back the chat a little bit and see if I can find any thoughts on this. Yeah, government approved list, that'd be interesting. Pretty much nothing that you value is government approved, if you're a decent person. It's an easier, shorter list that way. And Chow's got the links. Thanks for that. Let's see. Martin says, "Be brave. God provides." Fired for my views. Now I'm working at far better place. Awesome that it worked out for you, and for standing up. So that can happen. I mean, it is happening. You know, we've got proof right here. Let's see. Hebrew word. Okay. Been teaching to Google image. Okay. I'm not sure what you mean there, but what do you guys think? I think ultimately it's just like how much to prep. It's going to be an individual decision, but I'm personally torn about it, because, you know, if we allow and don't complain, at least, to the leaders of whatever community for putting us in a ghetto and forbidding us to talk about our faith outside of our little Bible study area or whatever it is, what message are we sending? We're accepting the shame, the cone of shame, so to speak, because we're saying, okay, we'll stay there, instead of protesting, you know, voting with our feet, so to speak. But it's really, truly a conundrum, because you just don't know which is the better course of action. And I can't tell anybody else which side of that they should choose, because I don't even know. You know, all I know is that what's going on in the world has been because Christians have not been salt and light for the most part. It was inevitable anyway, but I think we could have done better looking back on it. Every little step of the way, if we don't say something or do something when it's still possible to speak and do, then we're giving tacit approval to it. And now we find ourselves, at least politically and in the secular realm, to the point where not only Christians and not only people of faith, but pretty much anyone with a thought the government doesn't like will be enslaved or killed. So it's a hard question to ask, you know, any of us. I mean, there's Christians having to face that every day in some parts of the world, where they have to decide whether they get to keep their life or their family or anything else if they don't keep their faith. That's one of those things I guess you really can't answer till you get there. But we should at least have deep roots in our faith because ultimately Jesus said that he would let no one snatch us out of his hands. So um, the important thing is to belong to him above else. But so the thing is that I'm just saying that presenting that we've got this secular problem and we've got this problem, as far as out in public goes, and we've got a private problem in our online communities where Christians have to stay in a special little ghetto so that other people aren't offended by our presence. But on the other hand, like I mentioned earlier, sometimes we get that deserved reputation of turning every conversation to our preferred topic, but most of us don't do that. But it only takes one or two, and the rest of us pay for that, and so we get left in these ghettos. But I think, again, this is an individual question that everybody has to answer, and all I am here to do is to raise the question and get people to think about it, because sooner or later, at some level, online or offline, each of us is going to have to face it at some point. So that's really all I have today. I know it's kind of a short presentation. It wasn't a real deep one or anything, but this is the conundrum that I'm hoping other people will chime in on someday. Nobody was available for today's panel, so that happens. And this is, just to raise a question, like I said, was my goal. Let's see, I skimmed Romans 14 before you mentioned the verses. Okay. Somebody mentioned Romans 14, 16. Yeah. There are gray areas. Romans 14 is about true tolerance, which is when something isn't, as far as Christians are concerned, impacting the gospel, that we have to be gracious, and there's disagreements among Christians. And that one in particular in Romans 14 is about whether or not to eat meat. Some people try to make it about whether or not to eat kosher meat only, but that's not, the context doesn't support that at all. It's about meat versus vegetables. And this debate goes on today among Christians as well, but the Bible does not teach a dietary law for Christians. It has somewhat restricted law for the people of Israel who are under the laws of Moses. Under those laws and that priesthood, and the two cannot be separated, where one goes the other, according to Hebrews 7. I think it's around verse 12 or so. Under those laws, there are certain foods that cannot be eaten. But Christians are not under the laws of Moses, and so we are not bound by any dietary laws, any sacred assemblies or festivals or sacred calendars, sacred furniture, sacred places. We don't have any of that because it's not a religion, it's a relationship. And yet most churches practice it like a religion with the sacred sanctuary and the altar and the whole nine yards. But again, as much of that it pains me that that's always been the case traditionally. The bigger problem is Christians not knowing the Bible, not wanting to know the Bible, not thinking it's important to know the Bible. You can barely get them to read it, and you can't get very many at all to study it. So this is, a big problem, like I said. But this sort of repression that's going on in some countries is coming here. We've already seen it, enough of it, going back several years, as I showed before. But yeah, this is a matter of conscience, but we all need to face the question. Thank you for kind comments as well. Just saw that one by Colin. I'm sure I missed some more. I'm sorry about that, but thanks anyway. And yeah, the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. And it is left up to personal conscience. So the important thing is that we're considerate of other people's consciences and don't rub our personal ideas in their faces when, especially on the issue of eating meat or what people wear beyond being modest. Everybody should be modest if you're a Christian and not try to draw attention to yourself. It doesn't mean wear sackcloth and ashes either and try to draw attention to yourself in a negative way either. But, what I'm saying is not to be so extreme and gaudy that we bring disrepute. So, Um, but anyway, yeah, I mean, it's fine to be a vegetarian or vegan or whatever you want to be. It's also fine to be in the other end of the spectrum where people there, because you can get testimonials from people on both ends, either extreme vegan or extreme carnivore, where they don't eat any vegetables at all, pretty much. Well, they might eat some vegetables, but no carbs or grains, and they do just fine too. There are people who have also switched back and gone to a mixed diet after trying one of the extremes. Whatever works for you, and let's not be food Nazis and try to, especially as Christians, try to be control freaks over other people as far as, how they choose to live. Our job as Christians is to hold up the standard of the Bible, which we got to read to know, and try to help each other with areas of concern. So, but yeah, this is a conundrum, as I've said before, about whether how we should conduct ourselves online, especially for the moment, because this is kind of a testing ground for the rest of the world. When communities like any of these that we're in get shut down, we will be out in the world, and then what will we do? Are we going to hide, or are we going to, and I can understand in very repressive places like China, people of any faith have to hide under, go underground, so to speak, because, you know, having to give up your life or your family's life or see your children sold into slavery because of your faith is a really tough thing. You still don't give up your faith, but you don't know till you're in it how much you're willing to pay for being salt and light. But right now it's easy for us. It's still easy. We can still be salt and light. The question is, what's the best way to do that, and what message are we sending if we either withdraw from those venues where we're kept quarantined or stay there? Either way, you could still be salt and light, but it's going to be a personal decision. And I'm not yet, as far as online places, communities that are very restrictive. Like I said, I left the one where I kept, where an admin kept saying, it's not a religious server, it's not a religious server. I know that. I haven't been bringing it up, until somebody else does. And if I ask a question about the ghetto part of the server, why do you have to tell me it's not a religious server? It's just irritating. So, and yes, it's a good point that the Apostle Paul was salt and light even in prison. He didn't exactly choose to go there. Yeah, bloom where you're planted, but at the same time, sometimes at the moment, we still have some choices to where we decide to go. So, and thank you, Amalu. And again, any other nice things I missed? But you're a good chat anyway, so I'm sure I missed a whole bunch of nice things. But yeah, I don't know what this little box here that popped up, probably some sort of ad, but it won't go away. I don't know what that is. But anyway, this is the world we live in right now, and we're going to have to decide how to conduct ourselves in it going forward, because it's going to get real, as they say. So, any other thoughts on your guys' personal opinions of which is sending a better message? Say you're in a online community and they say you can't talk about Christianity unless you're in the Christian section, the Christian ghetto, and yet they don't restrict other spirituality, only yours. The question is, what should you do about that? Let's see. If you'll need to respect animal life. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing disrespectful about animals as food, because God himself told Noah after he got off the boat, I gave you all this other stuff before, but now I'm giving you everything, including the animals, for food. So this is a big deal, to know the Bible. So somebody's trying to get my attention in my server. Let's see. So hopefully the audio hasn't gone down or anything. I'm looking at the restream multi-stream chat. So if there's something going on in one of the other venues, I don't know about it. Okay, something, the message about roles that are set on my server are working. Okay. Are working, or did you mean are not working? Uh, can I do that right now? I might be confused. Unless I could wait until after the stream ends, which might be pretty soon because I'm running out of things to say. But um, let's see. Yeah, you will be assimilated. So, yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't know there was a role problem. Um, I don't know how I can do that right now because, Crystal, because you already are an admin and you have the owner role. I don't understand. We'll have to work out that later after the show because it's as far as I can tell, unless it's just the live stream, I don't know. But yeah, we'll do it later because I don't understand. Uh, yeah, there's evidently something set up wrong in my server, so we'll work that out afterwards. So yeah, all right. Um, let's see. Yep, there's the reference in Genesis 9:3. Thanks for that, Chow. Everything that lives and moves about will be food for you. Just as I gave you the green plants, I now give you everything. So, yeah, that is what coming to a country near you is the China thing. And as far as meat, eating meat or not, it is not a mandate from God not to eat meat or must eat meat. It's neither way. So, anyway, um, that's all I got, and I'm not seeing any, expressions in the chat about what you personally think is the best message being sent by our actions as a Christian community, whether we should accept the shame of being in a ghetto or whether we should just do our own servers or what. I don't know if there's a door number 3. So, pro-alien reptilian groups defend Christianity. Well, I didn't know there were such groups as far as being in favor of them. But yeah, that's what people should do if they do value their own freedom, is to stand up for everybody's freedom. New World Order is pushing the vegan agenda. That's the thing too, is they are. And this has also been, I'm not trying to tell people they shouldn't be vegans because the Bible doesn't say that's wrong. It doesn't say it's wrong to eat meat. But on the other hand, it's interesting also that a lot of quote unquote new age groups also push veganism, and supposedly it helps with enlightenment in their eyes, and being, getting outside of this realm in some way, that eating meat somehow inhibits that as far as they're concerned. But yeah, it's just an observation. Again, Romans 14 is the go-to on meat or not, and it says, up to you personally. So, hey, Dr. Law, good to see ya. I am just about to shut down. I usually run, I start at 2 Eastern, so it was about 45 minutes ago. And I usually run an hour or to an hour and a half, but I really didn't have a deep topic today, just a question to ask people, just to recap real quick. What should we do about cancel culture in our online communities where they want Christians to stay in little ghettos and not talk about their faith outside of it, while other people of other faiths and philosophies can talk freely wherever they want in the server or the message board or chat room, whatever it is? And the question is, do we stay in our ghetto and accept the shame that is accorded to us by the rulers of the community, or do we leave them, which doesn't mean those people there can't hear the gospel. I mean, the gospel is freely available to everyone in the world. Well, except in places like China. But online especially, we still have a lot of places where the gospel can be heard. And the question is, we shouldn't think that just because we leave in a community that they will never hear the gospel. But there's more to it than that. And again, each of us has to decide how we're going to answer that question. And I'm still not settled on whether I should, because most of the time I just leave a place that wants to treat people like that, with a double standard against Christians. But I don't know. I don't know which is sending the best message. So, let's see. Yeah, avoiding GMOs is always good. Yeah, the Impossible Burger is just highly processed, no matter what it's made of. Yeah, so some nice, good-natured fear-mongering there. But yeah, this is a valid question that we're all going to have to face at some point. But yeah, there's no sacred diet for Christians, and nothing. Nobody should get high and mighty or oppress people or look down on people from either side. Now I will draw the line, in chats and so forth. If they say no, I can't say Jesus or God, I have to say Yah or Yeshua or something like that. I refuse to comply, and if that gets me banned, that's on them, not me. So anyway, but the issue of when people say you can't talk freely like other people can, I just have a big problem with that. Yeah, we're not supposed to cloister ourselves like the Amish do, which they even interact at some degree, but people going to monasteries and forming exclusive communities where they don't let anyone else in. It's one thing to have a community where Christian values are mandated, but it's another to say that those Christian values include never allowing other people freedom of conscience. So, but yeah, are we really not staying inside if we stay in our ghetto in a community online? That's the question. So, surrounded by Amish, that can be good though. I mean, in times being what they are, they may be the only place you can get real food of any sort. But yeah, that's the conundrum, is what to do about the BANdemic of, wanting to silence all sorts of religious talk. Even like I've said before, about calling a religion organized, that somehow that makes it less spiritual. It's a false label, because organization of people who have something in common has nothing to do with whether or not their spiritual thoughts should be expressed in a place that allows all other spiritual thoughts to be expressed. There's no reason to segregate quote-unquote organized religion. So I have a problem with that. But yeah, Emily, you're just allergic to everything. I hate that, but what can I do? But yeah, the food is poisoned, which is another reason that we are in the last days, because there's no going back after this point. It would take, a long time to get rid of all the GMOs and the substances that have been put into the soil and food on such a massive scale, and the genome has been so watered down, and there's just no going back. God needs to step in and fix, and he will, and people will hate him for it. So, yep, the Ministry of Truth from 1984. Yep, forbidden words. That was another point of that book, was restricting thought by restricting vocabulary. We got all sorts of words that you're not allowed to say that change every day, getting more and more restricted, and we'll be talking like the people in 1984 saying double unplus good if something's really bad. You can't have the word bad. You can only have the word good and make it plus or minus, That's how bad it's getting. Orwell wasn't kidding when he said those things. This is exactly where it's going, where it's becoming right now, in that, you can get in trouble for using the wrong pronouns. You can get in trouble for saying you believe in hard work. This is considered racist now. That's sort of restriction and stranglehold on expression is exactly what the New World Order wants. So, anyway, it's a problem, and we're getting close to our hour, I guess close enough, but I really don't have a whole lot more to add to this topic today. And yeah, I mean, that's another thing. I mean, as far as the food available, try to stock up on non-perishable things as much as you're able, and not everybody is. And so, as I always say, do what you can and trust God for what you can't, and try not to worry about it, even though it's really freaking people out. Because worrying about it does no good, as Jesus said. So, yeah, like I said, it's up to each of us to decide where our personal lines are drawn. And just wanted to give you guys something to think about as far as, you know, what you will personally decide to tolerate or not going forward. So, anyhow, I think I'm going to end it. I have an outro I'm going to try to play that my buddy Pillbox made, although he's going by the name XO of the RO now. And it's going to be what it's going to be. So I'm going to try to play this outro. Hopefully you can hear it. And we will see you all next week.
This is the Bible Literalist channel. You got here one way or another. Remember, the path is very narrow. Turns out Jesus is God. This is the great deception, and blood always finds its level. Thanks for being here. God bless.